Hi, I'm Ariya Larker, and you are listening to my podcast, All Things Acting with Ariya, a place where I talk to creatives about this wonderful, crazy, and painful career we call acting. If you are not an actor, please do stay tuned, because though this podcast is called All Things Acting, we will also discuss the general torturous but rewarding life as a creative. Hello and welcome back to my podcast. So, today's guest is currently the artistic director over at Enact Solutions, and he also has had a wealth of experience as an actor and director, not just across the UK but also Europe and Canada. Daniel McClelland, welcome to my podcast.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. It's very exciting.
Oh, I'm very excited to speak to you. So I have just given you a really brief, quick introduction there. Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is you actually do?
Of course I will. Shed a bit of light. So, my name's Dan. So currently I'm artistic director at Enact Solutions, and I suppose to shed a bit of light on that, Enact are a drama for training organisation. So we use drama in all of our learning environments to try and just instill positive messages. So we work in lots of different fields, and like bullying, harassment, equality, diversity, and inclusion. And it's my job essentially to make sure, sort of dramatically, the work that we do hits. It's effective. It's sort of, we want, without putting a too cheesy spin on it, we do want the work that we do to sort of change people's attitudes and behaviours. So it's my job to make sure the drama that we show them kind of does that and is emotional and evocative. So that's my role, and obviously within that, working with the actors, as often acting myself, writing and directing. So there's lots that goes into it, which is, to be fair, brilliant, because I absolutely love that stuff. And before that, I've been a jobbing actor since I graduated in 2009 from Salford Uni. And I think when did I start Enact? Start Enact in 2019, I want to say 2019. 10 years really as a jobbing actor, doing just lots of different jobs, bit of theatre, a few short films, lots of that. But I really probably got sort of the bulk of my career was in children's theatre and theatre and education and touring theatre, and it was that was how I sort of crossed paths with Enact, and I ended up sort of developing a really good relationship with Enact, working with them over sort of 4, 5, 6 years on different projects. And then the opportunity obviously came to join them full time, which was really exciting, and I jumped at it. And then obviously 2020 sort of hit, and that made it a little bit more interesting, but it's also helped us learn lots as well. So that's sort of me in a rough nutshell.
Nice. I want to come back and focus on you starting off as an actor for Enact. For our listeners and viewers who maybe don't really understand what corporate acting is, can you tell us a little bit more about what this involves?
Yeah, of course. So corporate acting, it can take lots of different forms and guises, so lots of people often think of role play, although we try not to use any role play. But essentially what we try and do is we would work with an organisation. So if an organisation came to us and said, we're having some real issues in and around inclusion, or we're experiencing discrimination within our organisation, we would try and work with them. So what we'd do is we'd create some drama which sort of mimicked the behaviours that are happening in that organisation. So say if there's a bit of bullying, we would create scenes which mimicked what was happening. We try and make them really lifelike and quite evocative. And then what essentially we do is we bring our delegates into that environment. So our delegates are our workshop participants. And we use the drama in loads of different ways to help them learn. So sometimes it might be just about trying to get them to increase empathy. They might see a scene where we've got a victim of bullying, and then they might actually, through drama, get to work with that victim, so they could talk to them, try and get underneath the surface, find out how they're feeling. And the whole point really is to get them to think wider about their organisation. And what we always try and do is anchor also lots of theory in there, lots of research around what's best practice and what organizations should be doing. To normally, hopefully, challenge and change whatever negative behaviors are in there. And I think in terms of some of the styles that we use lots of Boal, so theatre of the oppressed, so lots of forum theatre as well, which is amazing, which is essentially where delegates or little workshop participants can watch a piece of drama and then they can actually start to engineer it and play with it. And you've done lots of that with us, which is very interesting. But it's always really fun. And I think the rich thing about us is and the rich thing about the drama and the corporate drama is there is nothing worse, I think, with organizations where they're experiencing some really damaging behaviors and they watch a PowerPoint or a training video. There's nothing worse than that, because I think you just sit there going, oh, this doesn't really change it. So we have an ethos at Enact, which is that essentially, if to fuel change, you have to feed an emotion. So if you see something which makes you feel a certain way, that it's that feeling that can fuel change. So if you see, like a scene with bullying in it or discrimination, if you can reach out and have a bit of empathy for the person on the receiving end of that, that gives us some fuel to work with. That means that we can tap into that empathy and we can say, all right, how do we want to channel it? How are we going to change this behavior? So what can you do in your organization? So that's where the drama side really comes in. And that's the little bit of pressure on me, I suppose, to make scenes which quote unquote change lives. But luckily so far we seem to be doing a really good job of it. And especially last year we saw a big rise as well in sort of people and organizations wanting inclusion work and health work, which is totally understandable because it's just the amount of inequality that has been not on earth, because it's always been there, but has been put on display, if you like, throughout COVID, has meant that I think people have really started to think a little bit differently about how they can support everyone during this time. So we've been trying to work with lots of organizations in that guise as well at the moment. So it's rough. So, but I suppose essentially bringing it back around to, what is corporate theatre? It is using drama and scenes to affect change. And sometimes that's straight drama, naturalism. Sometimes it's verbatim theatre that I use. Sometimes it's role play, where we'll ask people to meet with fictional characters. Sometimes hot seating. Even to the point of, we've had some lovely workshops where we've asked delegates to write scripts in the workshop and direct their own scripts of the kind of behaviours they would want to see. And there's lots of improv in it as well. So it's a really lovely mix and blend of techniques with the goal of affecting positive change.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy working with Enact. As you said, I've done a few workshops with you guys. Love the forum theatre. I know that the delegates do as well. They seem to dread it in the beginning when we first introduce it, because they're like, oh my God, I don't want to direct anything, just let me sit and watch. But they get into it. You hear them saying stop over each other and they all have different things to say. I also love the hot seating sections, because we have certain characters that are just awful. And when they are questioned by the delegates, as an actor, it's so difficult sometimes to sit there and just not smile with amusement of how into it they get. But saying this, I think that corporate acting differs greatly from sort of screen acting and commercial acting in terms of the fact that you're working with very professional people. And there's a certain way that you do have to hold yourself. And, a lot of us, when we come into acting, we're like, I'm an actor. I don't have to work in these professional environments and wear suits and stuff. And then here I am with a full-on shirt and blazer on. And, I'm acting the position of a manager or something. But for me, I enjoyed this because I come from quite a professional background. I was a full-time teacher before I went into acting, and I think being a teacher, I learnt a lot in the way I communicate with other teachers and head teachers and parents, and I've taken a lot of that learning into my corporate acting. Now, what is it that you particularly look for when you audition actors? How do you know that this actor will work really well with an act?
It's a really good question. I suppose it's a really interesting mix with what I look for. I think it's hard to put into a word or a phrase, but I think one of the things you really need is very intelligent performers, and we rely a lot on improvisation, and forum theatre essentially it's a prescribed form of improvisation. Hot seating is all improv, role plays all improv. So it's a mix of really having that sort of competency and being comfortable improvising and with sitting in a character, but it's also having the intelligence that's running underneath that to know where exactly what you're saying, where you are, what environment you're in, where the boundary environment stop and start. So it is quite tricky because when we're in an audition, what I tend to do is I try not to audition people in sort of 10-15 minute slots. I try and do it in half an hour to 45 minutes because I want to be able to work with someone and to see how they respond to different scripts. And I would say one biggie is how people respond to direction. Whenever I'm doing an audition, it might be a case of, right, actually, I'm going to throw two or three different different objectives at you, different character motivations at you. I want you to play this certain way. And I'm never looking for anyone to be perfect, because I know myself, it's very difficult, and auditions are so stressful. But as long as I can see that someone is taking that direction well, moving a scene in a different direction, then I know that I can go, well, they're obviously really talented, but also I know that there's someone I can work with in the rehearsal room. We can flex and we can bend, and actually it's going to be fun. The other thing I would say I look for is I really like it to be collaborative, which is kind of, it sounds a bit weird because obviously it is about, we have a certain objective as a workshop, but also in the rehearsal room, I kind of like it to be collaborative, open. So I do like people who I know, or I can get a sense of ideas running through, that they are going to bring something to the table that they can feed into it. For example, I mean, with you, we did. I remember we did a filming day, and you threw a scenario in there, and we ended up filming that scenario.
Yeah.
Just off the cuff, but it's that kind of confidence as well. But I suppose that works both ways. It's my job to make sure that hopefully feel comfortable enough to do that, which I like to think we got. But
you do, yeah.
Hopefully. So yeah, I would say comfort in improv is a big one. Response to direction is a really big one as well. The other one a big one, and this is, I suppose, generally is prep. If you can tell someone's turned up to an audition and they've done a bit of prep, they know a little bit about you. They also know a bit about, they've obviously looked at the script and they've made sure they're comfy with the script. You just hit the ground running if that happens. Where unfortunately there has been a lot of auditions where that's not happened, or you can see people just opening the script right in front of you and you're going, okay, all right. So yeah, I'd say those are the big ones.
Nice. So we have talked a lot about the corporate side of this. Now I want to come back and talk about you and your acting journey. You mentioned earlier that you've worked in Canada. Can you tell us a little bit more about your time in Canada? What did you do
there? Yeah, Canada was amazing. So when did I go to Canada? I think it was 2013 to 14. Me and my partner Jan went to Canada we had the opportunity. So we had family over there, and we were both living in London at the time. London was just really, it was sapping us a little bit. I do love London, but I went down to London with big dreams of sort of doing lots of acting, but I suddenly quickly found myself working odd jobs to pay rent and that kind of thing. And so before I got too settled, we had the opportunity to go and stay with some family in Canada. And we were sort of thinking about it and thinking about what we wanted to do. And originally it was just, we'll go for 3 to 6 months and do some traveling. And then we saw that there was the opportunity to get a visa for 12 months for a year. So yeah, so we thought, well, let's just go for it. I did a bit of research before I went to Canada about what the industry was like over there. So I went to Vancouver, and the industry is weird but amazing in Vancouver. So I thought, well, let's make the most of this opportunity. We got to Canada. We stayed with our auntie, who is just wonderful. Sorry, my phone was. So got to Canada, stayed with my auntie, and what I did quite quickly was just started to get a feel for the agents that were out there. We had the work permit in place, so I was allowed to work. So I did a bit of research and joined an agency which is hands down just the best agency I've ever been with. It was another level to anything I've ever experienced. They're called Premier Talent Management, with what I can only describe as the most formidable but amazing woman ever as my agent, called Trudy Aronson. She was she was just amazing. I remember I went to meet with her. So I did some research first about the agency. I found it was a small boutique agency. There was a couple that I was interested in and that I'd applied to, who would invite me for an audition. But it was Trudy's agency was it was just a bit smaller, and I kind of looked on their books and did a bit of research about them. They had some really good credits, but also it was a comfortable client base, because I think you never want to feel like you are one in a sea of people. You want to feel like actually you have that little bit of individual value. And so I went to meet them. We clicked, did a little bit of an audition. She was amazing, and straight away I was a bit scared of her, if I'm honest. And I was a little bit. She was like, right, okay, here's my expectations of you. But in a way, I think that was what I needed at the time, as someone new in the industry in Canada. I needed someone to lay down the law and go, right, this is what's going to be expected of you. So I suppose the really bizarre thing about being in Vancouver and the industry over there, which I learned quite quickly, was that one of the first things Trudy said to me was, "You're not allowed to do any theatre. We will fire you if you do any theatre."
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, I'm a bit concerned about that, because I kind of love theatre. And she was lovely, and I did, again, it wasn't just their agency; it was a few different agencies. But she said, "Look, the nature of the business in Vancouver is that Vancouver is this little beautiful hub where it's just north of the US border. It's like an hour and a half north of the US border. An hour and two north of Vancouver, you've got Snow Peak Mountains, which look like, Arctic settings. A couple of hours east, you've got prairie lands, which is great for westerns and stuff like that. You've got sandy beaches in Vancouver itself. So it's a really good place for location shoot. It's also got 3 or 4 studios, because what I was learning was that a lot of American companies like the CW, which does all the sort of Arrowverse kind of things, and a couple of other studios are up there, because when the American dollar and the Canadian dollar have a difference, essentially when it's cheaper to use the Canadian dollar to film a production companies have a base in Canada, says they can just go, well, it's slightly cheaper for us to shoot in Canada at the moment. Let's do. So that, combined with just the locations in and around Vancouver, means that there is a huge amount of commercial and TV work there. So bringing it back round, what Trudy was essentially saying to me was that if you get theatre and you go off on a 6-week tour, actually we could probably put you up for 15, 20 commercial jobs in that time, and one of those is going to get us more money than your theatre job. So unfortunately, you're not allowed to do any theatre. And she was right. I mean, at the height, I was getting, I think 2 weeks I got 6 auditions each week for like jobs. It was and don't get me wrong, they weren't like some of them weren't amazing auditions. I think we all know what commercial auditions can be like when you watch someone eat spaghetti in an interesting way. So glad I trained for 4 years for this. But some of them were amazing. So it was, from that point of view, it was eye-opening, because it really made me really knuckle down and get better at TV acting. Because straight away, and then again, that was my agent. She essentially gave me a list of teachers and courses, and she was like, these are the best, have a look at them, see who you like, but I want you on one. So she was like, I'm not just at home. So I went to a TV acting class there. I went to it was really interesting. An accent and culture class, which was phenomenal. But it was all just essentially just getting in there and getting used to and getting ready for TV/commercial auditions. Yeah, which is something just I've never experienced before in my life. Some weeks, obviously, it was just like it is. You don't get any auditions. But I remember, there's a weird spell, and I just thought, oh my word, I've had this many auditions in my life. One, yeah, got two in one day once, and unfortunately, I got confused, and I wore the wrong costume to one.
Oh no.
Yeah, I turned up in a waiter's outfit for a Western commercial, and I thought
God.
I'm in the wrong one. So, but luckily, no, it was just an amazing experience. And yeah, I learned a lot, and I think it definitely, I would recommend it if anyone has the opportunity to work either in Canada or the US. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about acting. I diversified and sort of grew as an actor. I also learned a lot about audition technique, but I think that was probably more from Trudy from anyone else. But as an example, I went for an audition for Hell on Wheels, which was an American sort of Western style show, and got the audition. Trudy rang me and she said, "Right, so here's your casting director. Here's a little bit of personal information about that casting director, so you can build a bit of rapport with them. Here's the shows that they cast. So I want you to have a look at the kind of shows they cast and match your performance to the shows that they cast." So it was a case of, I was like, oh my word. Then she said, "I found out also who the director of the episode you're auditioning for is. Here's that director. Wow. Yeah, here's that director. Here's what he's directed." And so all of a sudden she was like, "What I want you to do is go and watch these things, watch the style of performance you see in that show, pitch your style to it. Straight away you're in then." And it was amazing. I didn't get the audition, but I got far. I got down to recalls for recurring roles. It was absolutely brilliant. It was sort of really exciting. But because essentially she had given me so much work to do and so much prep to do, it did mean that I could go into that audition and I was kind of like, I know exactly how to pitch this. I know where I need to be. I can kind of play into your hands a little bit. And I used a little bit of personal information she gave me and had a nice chat with the casting director. But I before that, I had never sort of put that level of detail and thought and prep into my auditions. I'd always prep the script, but I'd always been like, here's how I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to interpret it. And I've not really thought about actually how would this slot into the TV program you're for, or how would that character gel with the other characters in the show, or if it's a commercial, did I look at all of the other commercials for that particular product and did I match mine? And no, I didn't. I was probably just a bit like, I'll just wing it. I'll be fine. So yeah, I mean, it was an amazing year. It was brilliant stuff. I got a lot of work, which I was really, really proud of. Got a lot of voiceover work, which was cool. Although one was weird. I had to do a Jude. I got it because I was English and the obviously the voice. And then I turned up on the day and they said, "Right, how's your Paul Bettany impression?" And I was like, and they went, the Vision from Jarvis or Vision from the Avengers. And I was going, I don't know. I've never done a Paul Bettany impression. And they were going, "Well, we want a Paul Bettany impression." and you're English, aren't you? And I was going, "Yeah, I am." And so I ended up doing this weird sort of approximation of just a posh Paul Bettany, which it was pretty naff. I don't think they were very happy with me then. So that was the only weird experience I think I ever had. Apart from it's just amazing. Yeah. Sorry, it rabbles a lot.
No, and it's so interesting to listen to. The Canadian sort of acting world isn't one that I know very much about, and I think quite a lot of people in the UK will find that very interesting to listen to.
Well, I think you hear a lot about sort of Hollywood or LA and stuff like that.
So Canada, I felt like was such a huge part of your acting journey and your growth as an actor. I bet it was a bit of a shock to then come back to the UK and try and resettle back here as an actor. What was that like? Can you talk a bit more about coming home?
It was a bit of a shock because you go from like having the momentum of lots of auditions and being seen regularly, and also I was a bit gutted to leave my agent. I was because she was amazing. Um, and essentially, I think I came back and I was quite optimistic. It was quite tough when we came back because we had a flat in London and stuff. But moved back in with parents when I came back. I think I was like 24, 25 at the time. So the idea was just move back in there. But in terms of getting back into I suppose the acting world, actually I took a really weird sort of left step really because I wanted to try and hit the ground running. And so essentially before I came back, I emailed, 3 or 4 of the different theatre companies I'd worked with, and just let them know I was coming back and that I was available for projects or auditions or whatever it was. I didn't go back with having an agent in the UK because actually my experience of having an agent in the UK was never a very positive one. I've only had one agency, which I love, I absolutely love, which was a cooperative. So actually, I thought, well, I'll self-represent for a while, but also I'll try and network a little bit to get back in with theatre companies. And I was really, really fortunate. There was a great theatre company called Watershed, which brought me on board as a stage manager or assistant stage manager to begin with, which actually I was really happy with. So I was dead chuffed to be doing that. I am an awful stage manager though. So it was. I think they did it more out of sort of kindness, but also because they knew I was someone sort of fairly competent. They could leave in the group and help rehearse. But as a stage manager, can't do lighting rigs, can't do anything vaguely handy or technical. So I ended up doing some stage management with them, which was really lovely. And also I suppose that's when I picked up quite a lot of work with Enact to begin with, because Rosie at the time, who was creative director at Enact, again, I emailed her and told her I was coming back, and she was lovely. And she just essentially said, right, okay, if we've got projects, we'll throw them away. So I picked up a few tours with them, but also what was really nice then was Enact. I got the opportunity through Enact and also through Watershed to get behind the scenes and do a bit more of the development side. So I remember Enact saying that actually they'd got a script that they wanted to write, but they couldn't write it in-house because they were just too busy. And would I want to try my hand at script writing? In the past, I was a bit of a pain whenever I'd done like theatre tours with Enact between or any theatre tours between 2009 and 2012. I'm a writer's worst nightmare because I tend to just tweak and change scripts. If you give me an inch, I will take a mile. But luckily, at some point, Rosie knew that, and I think she saw that as more of a positive than a negative, which a lot of people have seen. And she saw it as, well, okay, this is someone who can work with the writing side of it as well. So I sort of inadvertently fell in when I came back to doing a bit of writing, doing a bit of production work, which was it was brilliant because the writing went well. I wrote a couple of scripts for Enact, and then they asked me to do a few more, and it really got me thinking about how to write and how to sort of how to pitch characters, plot lines, sort of thinking about character arcs and things like that. So it got me thinking about drama in a different way, and then I started to write lots more just for personal sort of development as well. On my computer, I've got like half written scripts. I've got a sitcom episode, which is just a weird thing.
Amazing.
But it was more a case of, I don't think they'll ever go anywhere, but it was more a case of actually it was really fun to do it. So that's sort of what I did. And then when I started to do more of that work, actually it just opened a few more doors with different organizations who were looking for writers and actors or creatives. I've never been a very much of a, what you'd call a triple threat, so to speak. I can't sing, I can't dance to save my life. I'm a fairly good actor. I'm solid on the acting side of it, but I think I have horrible stories of actually one director being at Enact attempting to make me dance. Yeah, it took them about 2 days to get like a 2 minute routine out of me, and I was just going, oh, so actually, what happened with me was I developed into the other side of it. So I tried to, as well as the acting, I thought I'm never going to be a singer, never going to be a dancer. Let's add a strings to the bow. So went into writing, went into sort of directing a bit more, and yeah, really grew from there. And I think what I then started to do was look for those kind of opportunities. So rather than just, I was still auditioning as a straight actor, but I was struggling to land roles and to land sort of, yeah, well, the auditions are just really tough, aren't they? So actually, I got more success at that point, looking for other like-minded companies like Enact, looking for other theatre and education training companies, looking for more corporate theatre companies which I could write, develop, work with, which really just helped me grow. And eventually, it got to that point where actually I was kind of, that was my specialism, was corporate theatre. I became my specialism. Which I'm, yeah, really, really happy with and really chuffed with, because it's not something I think, it's not something at drama school you think, that's what I want to be. I want to be, but it was something that as I was doing it, I was realizing I really enjoyed the work. Felt like I was doing something good, felt like the workshops we were doing were having a positive effect on people. So it was a case of falling into and finding something really worthwhile in it, which I'm, yeah, really, really proud of. So I suppose that was the way I sort of adapted coming back into the UK.
Yeah. And I find your story so fascinating because you're a prime example of like the modern day working actor. A lot of us who get into acting have, that Hollywood dream that you're gonna, you're discovered by an agent and then it's only a matter of time and you're gonna be on the big screen. But it doesn't happen like that for everybody. But I can also imagine that sometimes you do have those thoughts where you're like, oh, I wish I could, really delve back into trying to get onto screen or like back onto the theatre. How do you sort of balance that? Because as much as I'm sure that you do love your job, I'm positive that there are probably times where it gets a bit much, and you remember back to being in Canada and all of these bookings. Do you have any advice for other actors who sort of are trying to balance that passion and love for drama and theatre, but also the need to pay bills?
Yeah, and oh, it's such a tough one, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. I think, especially for me, when I'm writing something, um, I don't ever envision anyone else acting in the scripts that I write. Whenever I envision what it might look like, I think, well, I'm the star of this show.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely that sort of that voice which goes, that would be amazing. Um, and it's one of those things, I suppose, with acting. The voice the other voice I have at the back of my head is, it's one of those things of, I am a product, if you like. I'm a brand, if that makes sense. I'm a business, and actually, in 5-10 years, I will be a slightly different business. I will be slightly older, and I'll be up for different parts. And it's something that I think I can always go back into the auditioning side of it. On the advice front, I suppose the biggest thing that I I can say, and it is a cliche, but actually it's really fulfilling, is just being proactive. Because yes, I work for Enact, but I still do lots of other stuff on the side. So that, I'm very fortunate because I love my job, but I understand a lot of people, and even myself, when I was working odd jobs, if you like, in London, I wasn't acting, and I still had that itch, and it was really frustrating for me because I just thought, you just think, really what I want to be doing. So the first step for me in that was being proactive. So, for example, the first few months I was in Canada, because that was the getting off the ground bit. That was a bit slower. So actually, what me and Jem did was we made a film in Canada, because it was like, well, this is what we want to be doing. But that began as just a little bit of a proactive project. But actually, when we got back to the UK, we just by that point we finished editing it. We entered it into a load of different festivals, and it got accepted into the festival. So yeah, and that just came from doing something that we thought, we're in this amazing, beautiful place, and we want to capture something of it. And it just came from, it sparked from that thought. So I think being proactive is a big one. The other one I would say is unfortunately at the moment, like, because the world is getting a little bit smaller, which is not a bad thing, but it does mean that I think you have to chase, and you have to work toward the parts that you want, rather than, I think it used to be a case of, as an actor with an agent, you could bank on getting a couple of big auditions, and you would be there and you'd think, okay, I'm going to get an audition at some point, and that's going to be the one. Whereas at the moment, I think actually you probably need to chase that a little bit more. So you need to be a bit more proactive. You need to work hard with your agent, and you need to make sure that you're doing the right things with them, and putting yourself in the right spheres. I do like doing stuff like that, and I don't. I hate networking. Networking is like, it's almost a dirty word, because I just think it's just awkward. It's just an awkward word. Like, I much prefer the word like talking. Try talking to people. Because I think when you put networking on it, it has this connotation and this stigma around pressure and having to sell yourself. Whereas actually, the biggest thing, I found when talking to people and sort of building connections, is just to reach out, just say, and be open and honest, and say, hello, this is who I am, this is what I do. I just wanted to reach out and see if there's any chance that we could collaborate in the future. So yeah, I mean, it's a difficult bit, because but I think the proactivity, like this, for example, doing something that actually fulfills you, and that gives you a bit of a boost and a voice, because that stuff doesn't go unnoticed. And I think when you have, for example, when you have an agent who takes a bit of, but takes an interest in you, if they can see that you are working hard, that you're doing your own thing as well as them pushing you, actually for them, it also gives them a bit of a boost, and it gives them the ability to go, wow, do you know what? Actually, they're doing lots at the moment. Let's try and push them a little bit. So proactivity is the best one. The other one I would say is bravery. Yeah, just it's a bit of a cliche, but oh man, it's a really embarrassing story. But well, Watershed that I used to work for. Actually, it's an old friend of mine. His dad is the director of that company, but I didn't really know him. I'd met, seen him a few times when I was younger. And it was when I got back from Canada, and my mum was like, well, should we give him a ring? And I was going, no, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. No, I'm not ringing up a friend of mine's dad and being like, hello. In the end, my mum was like, I've rang him. He's going to call you. He's going to give you a call, and he's going to talk to you. And I was just like, that's so embarrassing, Mum. And this guy called Chris, he rang me. He was just amazing. He was lovely. He was like, why are you being weird? He's like, we're creatives. Just ring me and just say, hi, I'm a creative, and actually what a bit of advice, or I wanted to know if there's any opportunities in the future. He's like, you're being really weird with this. Your mum rang me, so I would ring you. I was like, I'm really sorry. But that was someone who was a bit like, actually, just picking up the phone and saying hi. Awkward, in it, but I'm a creative, you're a creative, I wondered if I could learn from you, and in the end that so that being brave, I love it at Enact, and we love it at Enact when people just get in touch. I say to all the actors that work with us, it's just pester us, just get in touch, just say hello. We want to hear from you, and it's that kind of bravery, I think, that makes people stand out, makes you go, oh, lovely, yeah, let's do some more work together.
Yeah, thank you so much for that advice. I feel like throughout this whole episode, you have shared so much, and I've learned a lot. I hope everyone listening has also learned a lot too. Before we wrap this up, then, Dan, do you have sort of any social media links or anything like that anyone can follow and contact you on, or a website to share?
Yes, yeah. So I suppose if we're at Enact Solutions on Twitter and Enact Solutions on Facebook. But if you just Google Enact, ENACT Solutions, you'll get our website with all of that stuff on. And yeah, the only sort of slight caveat I'll put in place is, and this is something I say, is please don't be offended if you do get in touch with us and I don't get back straight away. I always endeavour to get back to people, because I'm an actor as well. I know what it's like when you reach out and you don't get anything in response. But my response rate is shockingly slow at the moment. So I will get back to you. I promise. If you do get in touch, if you do reach out, I will get back. But please don't be offended if it's not immediate. But do, because I think that's the big thing, isn't it? It's just, especially at the moment, especially the year that we've all had, is reaching out, making connections. Even if nothing comes of that now, hopefully, fingers crossed, connections for the future. So yeah, have a
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. And thank you again for coming on my podcast. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did.
I really did. I just talked about me a lot, which, yeah, so I hope it's been useful for someone.
No, it has. It has. And like I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of the questions I've been desperate to ask you myself anyway, and we're always working when we see each other, so it was really nice to talk to you and have this time to finally hear about your journey into acting. It was very, very interesting. And thank you to everybody at home for tuning in to another podcast of mine. I really hope you enjoyed that episode, and join me next time to hear me talk with my next guest. Thank you and goodbye.